everyone, it's Max, and today I am here with my March wrap-up. And I'm sorry if you hear any barking, the puppy is in the room with me. This month I read quite a bit. A lot of the books I'm not going to bring up in this wrap-up because I have a whole reading vlog dedicated to the Twisted Tales books, which the reading vlog will have come out by this point, my last reading vlog, so please go check it out. I spent a lot of time on it. It was 3 weeks of reading and a lot of work, and I'm really proud of it. But without further ado, let's just get into it. So the only readathon that I participated in was the Becca's 48-hour bookoplathon, and I was able to read all 8 books. So I am really pumped about that. But the first book I did finish was An Artificial Night by Seanan McGuire. And this was my Seanan McGuire book of the month. And this was okay. So far, it's definitely my least favorite, which out of 3 books is not saying that much. I liked it. This is where October Daye takes on The Wild Hunt, which was crazy. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I just wasn't that into it. I think it might have been just like my mindset a little bit, but I also just didn't love it. So I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished was my Tamora Pierce book of the month, and it was Mastiff. And this was the last book in the Becca Cooper series. And I, again, wanted to like this more than I did. The problem that I had with this trilogy is that it didn't follow one cohesive storyline. I get like a series of standalones like following the adventures of someone, but it was the fact that it was a solo trilogy, like there were only 3 books and each one follows just a completely different plot. I wasn't the biggest fan of. Becca Cooper is a cop, and the first book, it starts with her just starting her first basically like probationary year as a cop, and then each book gradually got bigger and bigger. So in the first book, it takes place in this one city. The second book, it takes place in 2 cities, and then the third book takes place almost throughout all of Tortle, which I really enjoyed that, where like the scale of like what happened grew, but I just wanted more from it, and the romance was super rushed, and it just kind of, the third book, some things happened that felt really out of character for some, and it also skipped over a very important like life plot line for Becca that I think would have been, I wish we had it. So overall, I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it, but I just wanted more from it. The next book I finished, I really enjoyed, and that was 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. This is a retelling of the Iliad and the Odyssey, but from the women's point of view. And we follow a lot of women. Now, the only issue I really had with this was that it was a non-linear storyline or timeline, and I didn't really understand why. There didn't seem to really be much of a reason as to why it was non-linear. It was just like for fun. And I can get behind a non-linear storyline if there's like a reason for it. Like if they're trying to like purposely keep you confused and it's supposed to be vague, but that's not what this was. And so I thought it just detracted from it. So I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but it was very good. The writing was amazing. The characters were great. Even if we only got 1 chapter from a character, you still felt so connected to them. And overall, I really did enjoy this. The next book I'm going to talk about was actually a DNF, and it was such a disappointing DNF, and that was The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. Now, in my reading vlog, I went on a little bit of a rant about this one, and it just annoyed me so much, where I think it's just a trope that I'm just sick of, where it's like, you can't be gay unless you have some other, okay, I use this word so much, but like quirky thing to you. So like the main character was gay or bi, I think gay, no, he's bi. Or queer, there's something, and he has ADD or ADHD, and then, but also he's like a fanfic writer, but also he's like so disassociated from like real people, and it was just like, he was so, I couldn't take him, like he was just so ridiculous, like being normal wasn't part of like any part of him, and I feel like that's just so overused. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I said it so much better in my vlog, but I just, like, I'm queer and I have ADHD, but I still like can act like a normal human being. So it's just like the fact that he basically felt like an alien that just really detracted from this, and his friends were a, you know, chapstick lesbian, a lipstick lesbian, an introverted guy. Like, I don't know, like I feel like each one of them just had to have like something. They had to be like just a stereotype in the LGBTQ plus community plus something else, and I just could not get into it. Our main character drove me insane, and it was supposed to be like we got snippets of his fan fiction, and it was just very badly written, and it's just, again, perpetuating a stereotype that fan fiction, just all of fan fiction sucks. And it just really, I just really couldn't get behind it, so I ended up DNFing it. Alright, the next book I'm going to talk about was actually quite the surprise, and this was the February Fairy Loot, which was This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria, and I did not know what to think going into this, and I flew through it. I read it in one day, and I just honestly could not put it down. This takes place in like an alternate future where I think like Rome like rules everything, and our main character is an orphan working in this library, and there were AIs at one point, but then like this creator found out how to like turn them all off and they're illegal, and she runs into a dormant AI who she wakes up, and he helps her find her brother, and there's just like, it's a standalone. And that is the one thing that really detracted from the story, is that it was so fast. I think this should have been a duology or a longer book, because it is like not even 400 pages, and they could have done so much more with the story and built upon it a lot more to make a longer standalone or the first book in a series. But overall, I did actually really like it, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Oh my gosh, this puppy is like bumping against my guitar and making all this noise, so I am sorry. But the next book I finished was, I don't know if I would call it a disappointment, because I feel this way about anthologies a lot, and that was A Universe of Wishes, edited by Danielle Clayton. There were some stories I liked. I loved V.E. Schwab's story. It's like telling the love story between Rai Maresh, the prince in A Darker Shade of Magic, and his love interest, which I loved. But then a lot of them were not very good. And I wish there was more of a centralizing theme than just wishes, because a lot of authors took it in a lot of different ways, which I can appreciate, but it just like was hard to like really get into it, where it was just kind of, there was no, I don't know, overarching like theme or plot, where like all these stories take place in the same town or in a circus or there's magic of some sort or anything. There was just like nothing. And so it was just, each one just kind of felt like, okay, pretty average, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. All right, from here I read 3 Twisted Tales, and then I went into Becca's 48-hour Bookopoly-thon. The first book I finished was Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers, and this is definitely so far my least favorite in the series. It follows 4 characters on a planet, or on a spaceship, and this spaceship is a planet basically. It's humans that have lived on this spaceship for years and years and years and years, and it's their planet. It just happens to be a spaceship instead of like a rock formation. And it was okay. It was very slow. There wasn't really any sort of plot. And I mean, even though I do enjoy her books for the characters, not the plots, it still just did not go great. I just did not really like it. I found it very boring, and the audiobook was okay, but again, not great. This went for Rebecca's Bookopoly-thon to read a book with a dark cover, and I ended up giving it a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Compared to the first 2 books, it was not good. The next book I read was Lumberjanes Volume 14, and I liked this more than some of the more recent volumes. I loved the first, I don't know, quite a few volumes of Lumberjanes when Noelle Stevenson was still part of it. At least this is what I think happened, because I find that they correlate. Is Noelle Stevenson was the creator and like wrote the first chunk of volumes, and I loved all of them. There were great morals and great stories, and they were awesome. And then she left, and I think it's because she became the showrunner of She-Ra. Again, the timelines kind of match up, and boy did they go downhill. They were not very good. I loved the characters, and like the plot lines were fun. There just weren't any morals anymore, and the stories just didn't feel that interesting. So then the ratings went down, and this was good. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. It was fun, but there was still something lacking, but overall I did enjoy it. Abby, do you have to chew? Abby found a squeaky toy, so if we hear squeaking, that's why. This is really fun for me. And this went towards Read a Fantasy for Becca's Bookoplathon. The next book I read was for read a book by a person of color author or with a person of color main character, and I went with both. And I went with Reflection by Elizabeth Lim, The Mulan Twisted Tale, and I ended up really enjoying this, really surprised, and I gave it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Definitely pick this one up. It was a lot of fun. And the tagline is, what if Mulan had to travel to the underworld? Very good. All right, for Read a Contemporary, I went with Well Played by Jen DeLuca, and I did not like this at all. I'm so bummed. So our main character, I liked our main character, except she just was basically a pushover, but she is in a friends with benefits relationship with this guy at their local Renaissance fair. And she messages him to say like, hey, I want something more, but she accidentally messages this public profile on Instagram, and it ends up being this other guy who responds pretending to be the guy that she wanted to talk to, and they get a relationship going with like messaging and everything, and then she finds out that it's actually this other guy. And instead of being angry about that or like being, you know, like what the hell, she's like that for like a day and then forgives him and then like gets in a relationship with him. And it just was not good. The first 100 pages was good. Everything else after that, not good. And I'm really bummed about it, and it basically sucked, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was for Chance Card, which was to basically take like a bunch of books that you want to read, a bunch of books that you don't really want to read, and then randomly choose one. I did 8 books that I brought for this readathon, that I had for this readathon, and then 8 books that weren't for the readathon, but I still wanted to read because like, I don't know, during a readathon, who wants to read books you actually don't want to read? And I was lucky and I got one that I wanted to read specifically for the readathon, and that was Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. Now, Ashley Poston is an author, hello, that I've read, oh my goodness, aren't you just so cute? Look at the baby. Ashley Poston is an author that I have read a fair amount of books for, like all of her books, and some of them for readathons, and I read her books so fast, and I enjoyed this. Again, it's a very short standalone. I think it could have been a lot longer. And this is about a girl who lives in this country that made a deal with these magic beings so that the forest and the creatures of the forest couldn't hurt them. But then when like the creatures of the forest are able to break through this barrier, she has to use a little bit of magic that she has to save her country. And there is a fox who accidentally is turned into a human, who's one of the main characters that I really enjoy, and a polar bear, who doesn't love a polar bear? I know I do. And overall, it was good. It was fun. It was fast-paced, but definitely could have been longer. And I end up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. All right, and then for Read the first book in a series, I went with a short novella that I had called Her Mad Hatter, which is basically like romance novels, like retellings, where fairy godmother is trying to find these characters' soulmates. And Hatter has basically a destiny with someone named Alice, but the fairy godmother has like given him so many different Alices, and none of them have worked out, and he's basically on his last leg because at some point, if they don't have their soulmates, they start dying, and he is dying until she finds Alice, a different Alice, and she brings her to Wonderland, but she is the granddaughter of an Alice that broke his heart, so he is very hesitant. It was cute. It was very short. I wish there was a bit more smut, honestly, but overall it was fine, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars again. The second to last book that I read for this readathon was for Read a Book That Takes Place in Present Day, and I went with The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is about a girl who tries to commit suicide, or she does. And she is taken to this place that's basically limbo. For her, it's a library. And she is able to see all these different versions of herself if she had made different choices. And honestly, it was okay. The first 100 pages is basically like, oh my god, look at how much of a mess she is and look at how much her life sucks. And then the second 100 pages is like, oh look, every other iteration of her life also sucks. And then the last, like, I mean, it's 288 pages, so like, but basically like the last like 50 pages, it's kind of like, okay, if she made this one choice, her life would be good. Only one choice out of these infinite possibilities was good. which kind of was like, okay, that sucks too. Like, it was just basically just beating this girl while she's down. And like, nothing was good and it all just sucked. And I get where it was going. Like, you know, stop trying to wish for things to change, like make the change yourself, or like be happy with the life you have, blah, 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 blah. Overall, it was okay. I can't remember the rating that I gave it originally, but honestly, I want to give it a 3 because I think it was pretty unremarkable looking back, and also just being like, just beat the girl while she's down. It was just depressing and like, but not in like a way, like some books like are made to be like realistically depressing. This was just like kind of meh. Like, and maybe it's the main character just was so unsatisfied with her life that like she was looking for a utopia, and like in every iteration something was wrong. But I was also like, okay, well, give her one where everything's right, and like it basically never happened, and it just was okay. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read for Becca's Bookopoly-thon was for the Read Other, which is basically read a book in a genre that's not one of your top 2 favorites. And I went with Giant Days Volume 1 because it's a contemporary graphic novel. I never read contemporary graphic novels, and contemporary is also a rare genre for me. And this was okay. It was a good like first volume, but honestly it was pretty average, so I also give this a 3-star. And then from there I read a bunch more Twisted Tales. So again, please go check out that reading vlog. I do understand that it's pretty long, but I read 11 Twisted Tales in it. So if you're just like wondering about this series and like if it's worth it, or like which one you should read if you want to read one of them, please go check it out. I did spend a lot of time on it and I really like it. But anyways, that's my March wrap up. This feels like this was kind of a mess, and that's because I had to like take out like 3 weeks worth of, or like 2 weeks worth of books that I read. So there we go. But I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!